time we talked about a serious problem in modern Monster Hunter. The problem? A lack of Seltases. There's so many monsters in so little time. So much space in this game. It's honestly a big crime. Looking at all of these environments and all these cool places, we have a serious lack of seriously cool faces. For Wilds, bring back the old monsters who've been exiled, the ones who'd kill you as they'd flaunt their gorgeousness, like a combo of bugs, a peasant and his queen who likes to give him rough hugs. They'll fly in like a helicopter and sting like a bee, like a weaponized Insectoid Muhammad Ali. Without further ado, and with plenty of time to savor it, let's talk about a monster who's surely a fan favorite. Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, we've had plenty of Monster Hunter videos up on the channel recently, of course, with just constant new bits of reveals and gameplay about Monster Hunter Wilds. But you haven't heard my voice in the context of Monster Hunter outside of pro and noobs for quite a few months now, and the main reason for that, for anyone wondering from the use of trailer footage in the intro, is because I am still pretty much completely spoiler-free on Wilds. I've literally only seen the reveal trailer and pretty much nothing else about the game, and that's just so I can preserve my first experience and reactions just entirely for you guys come launch, and I'm honestly really excited for that. Today I'm going to do one of the few things that make sense given that context and talk about a monster, or in this case a pair of monsters, that I would absolutely love to see be given another chance and return in Monster Hunter Wilds. With the caveat that to come to the conclusion of which one to actually talk about, I did give Josh a list of monsters that I wanted to talk about, and he confirmed this one as a solid candidate without telling me any of the reasoning of why. So today I won't so much be talking about how Seltas and Seltas Queen would be a perfect ecological or gameplay fit with what we've seen of Wild so far, because, well, personally I just haven't seen much of it at all. Instead, it's much more just a sort of love letter to a monster that I appreciate an unbelievable amount, and my thoughts on why it should absolutely return in modern Monster Hunter in one of the newer games, especially Wilds, and how this monster could be changed too. So, Seltas and Seltas Queen. As a pair, these are actually two of the most unique monsters in the whole series. For a lot of monsters, they are generally based around a similar skeleton. Not all fanged wyverns are the same, but there are 2 or 3 general conceptual models underneath the monsters that make it easy for them to make others that move and animate the same sort of way if they also look the same. And this is one of the sort of core little behind the scenes things in Monster Hunter that allows us to have so many monsters per game, and why in a lot of cases returning monsters don't really replace slots that would have been filled by new monsters, because if a monster comes back, it's because they're using a skeleton that was already in use in the game 9 times out of 10. That's where Seltas and Seltas Queen differ significantly. They aren't the only insect monsters in the series, but they have wildly different shapes and functional movements from every other monster, including from each other. And while this makes them harder for the devs to actually implement in the game, it also makes it far more interesting, in my opinion, to see how they would, because we haven't seen this skeleton or this just type of creature since the 4th generation, with the last time these monsters existed, and that in itself leaves a lot of room for growth, even on the animations and attacks the monsters already had. Take, for example, the actual spider monsters. We had Nursilla in the past, and Nursilla was cool, but then we got Raknikidaki, and Raknikidaki was such a step up in my personal opinion, just in general design quality, but also the animations were such a big deal of a difference, and it made it feel just so creepy in the best ways. From a more experiential standpoint, then I absolutely adore Seltas and Seltas Queen themselves. My first experience with them personally wasn't sadly in the story of Monster Hunter 4, which did them some serious justice in the way that the whole Seltas to Queen thing is revealed in multiple stages in different quests, but it was that way in Generations for me. And I can fully say that even without the story focus, even without the proper cutscenes, that first Seltas encounter is nearly otherworldly, just due to how different it is from other monsters, especially for a relatively low tier creature, which in the prior games, and most of the other ones, even in that game too, are just sort of raptors. And it's the fact that it's comparable to things like Great Duros or Raptors or doshaguma, but with a slight bit more danger to it. It's unique, and that makes it really fun for that difficulty tier. Then you get further into the game, progress a couple of hunter ranks, and out of nowhere you end up fighting the Seltas Queen. And the through line of that is just from one to the other, makes this just really cool of a reveal the first time that you see the second monster. And I think that would still translate incredibly well to a modern Monster Hunter game, even if they're not properly a part of the story. Especially with the vast majority of current hunters that aren't actually Monster Hunter players only actually playing 5th generation games, because so many many people started with World and then only played World, maybe moved on to Rise and Sunbreak, but most people haven't gone back before that. For many people, it will be the same thing as having a new monster if a monster shows up that wasn't in the 5th generation in Wilds. And I think that was an oversight from the devs a little bit when putting so many monsters that were in World into Rise, simply a bit of a missed opportunity to show all these new players of the series some of the older monsters, instead translating ones that they probably would have already seen. And Seltas and Seltas Queen, when essentially being new monsters for the sake of all of those people who have never interacted with the games before the 5th generation, makes these two monsters a much stronger case for inclusion as far as I'm concerned in my eyes. As for the actual fights, diving into it more properly, even Seltas, as the lower ranked of the two monsters, is a really unique and fresh experience compared to the other lower ranked monsters. It can fly, it has really fun movement patterns, and both of those things together I think would be massively improved by the modern game technology of being in Wilds, being able to improve these animations, add more variation, and giving them just sort of much more insect-like erratic movement patterns, while still also making the animations nice and readable due to high fidelity graphics. Aside from this, its main notable attacks are essentially just charging at you but from the air, using its massive horn as a weapon, and of course spitting globs of goo at you that apply defense down. But then we move on to Seltas Queen, which is where things get really just awesome as the further tier monster, but not just because of how Seltas Queen herself acts, but the fact that from the bottom up this fight is built essentially as a duo fight with regular Seltas. Seltas Queen almost always has a Seltas fighting beside her or on top of her unless you kill it mid-fight, and if you do, she will summon another one relatively quickly afterwards. I love this concept, how it feels in the fight, like they're just sort of disposable creatures to her, like she doesn't care about them, they're just like reloading the magazine of a gun to Seltas Queen. The two monsters work together, sort of, forming essentially one unit, which creates a lot more interesting situations. It makes for some very interesting sort of combo attack animations, which is really fun, and they can absolutely build on that, and they form eventually into just sort of one creature, which creates a lot of the more interesting situations in the fight. Seltas firing globs from the top while Seltas Queen tries to stomp on you, Seltas literally helicoptering into hovering Seltas Queen around to then just fully drop her and slam her full weight up on top of you, and even more charging by just essentially flying as a pair. The moveset in general is just really unique and special, even in a game series known for its already really intricate and incredible monster designs and fights. It really even stands out among all the rest of them in my eyes. It's always been one of my favorite monster combinations, most specifically Seltas Queen is one of my favorites, and it's in a way that definitely makes this disappointing to not have appeared for a full generation, in my opinion, because the 5th generation was the biggest technological leap the series has ever had from the previous generation. And from what I know about Wilds, it will again be a pretty massive leap from the 5th generation and just the capabilities of what the game will be. So why not put that to use properly with an updated creature like Seltas and Seltas Queen, who would just be able to be improved so much from this. Just thinking about how much more depth you can put into their combined moveset when fighting together, the more intricate animations from combining this pair of monsters. And if that herd of large bear monsters in the initial reveal trailer for Wilds means anything substantial at all, I can't help but feel like there would even be a chance of a Seltas Queen with multiple Seltases fighting alongside her at the same time, like her own sort of colony of minions that she could send at you in different ways. Maybe this could even add more sort of combination forms for them. Maybe it wouldn't just be one Seltas and a queen. Maybe you could have one Seltas holding the left side, one Seltas holding the right side, and it makes for more interesting animations using the tail. I don't know. I just think that there is a lot of potential for this to be expanded upon in a game that has more resources to work with like this. Past that, I think insect monsters in general deserve more of a chance to shine as well. We got some returning sort of funky skeletons in Rise and Sunbreak with some spiders, some crabs, and it was great, but insects are still one of the major monster categories that has not been properly hit again. Same goes for the snake wyverns, which I will touch on to say I would also love to see snake wyverns returning in Wilds as well. My two best experience in Monster Hunter were my first one, the story and discovery through Monster Hunter World before I even knew what Monster Hunter really was, and then the most diverse one, which is my follow-up journey through Monster Hunter Generations afterwards, basically being introduced to each of the remaining monsters of the series back to back and realizing one after the other just how constrained the idea was in my head of what a Monster Hunter monster could actually be because of what World had, and having that concept just expanded upon and broken with each new, more interesting, unique, and special creature that I saw. And one of the biggest moments for me of that realization was not only the first Seltas fight and how genuinely cool that is as a low-tier monster compared to the ones I'd seen before, but then how it progressed into Seltas Queen, who is herself an extremely intriguing and unique monster, even before it becomes a duo fight and they turn into like a two-man helicopter team, and I just absolutely love it to death. I think this fight more than has the potential to improve massively in a newer modern game setting, much more than most monsters would, honestly, with more interesting terrain in the game as well for them to work with, and advanced animations, and thus the potential for just tons of new attacks in their moveset. The idea of massive open areas and possibly multiple large monsters together in Wilds also works with this, it makes sense, and it interacts with how Seltas and Seltas Queen function. And then of course just the factor that Wilds will reach a lot of the hunters who have never experienced 4th generation Monster Hunter games or even the ones before them, which would then make Seltas and Seltas Queen be essentially a new monster for all those players. And I just truly believe that this combination is one of the best new monster experiences that a hunter can ever have. Saying that from my own experience, which was recorded the first time I fought them. That just about does it for today, everyone. Just sort of a discussion about Seltas Queen and of course Seltas 2, partly just why I love them so much as creatures, but more with the hopes of generating some sort of hype or wish for them to return. Because if I can infect you all with the want to bring these two monsters back, then maybe we can be loud enough for Capcom to hear us. And maybe if they hear us now, it might be a bit too late for Wilds, if it's not already planned to be included, of course. But the only way that we can influence the monsters that are brought back in the series at any point is to make enough noise about them to tell them that we want them. So this is my noise. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.